Hey, what's good? So, I'm a 17-year-old amateur animator who's been doing this for about 6 years. And if you take a look at my most recent projects, or hell, even most animations on YouTube, you're gonna see one specific type of animation, 2D. However, there's another type of animation that's kinda underrated, which I've actually been doing way longer than 2D animation, stop motion. Now recently I was thinking to myself, why do I see a lot more popular 2D animations over stop motion ones? Out of the two methods, which is the better way to animate? Which one do I even like doing more? So in this video, I'll be taking this scene from Dragon Ball and adapting it in both 2D animation and stop motion. Let's get it. Alright, so this is a cool idea and all, but how am I actually gonna do this? That's probably what y'all are thinking, and to be real with y'all, I low-key don't know.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
See, something y'all don't know about me is that I'm unorganized as hell when it comes to animation. Like, I'll start with doing a little storyboard on paper, which is fine and all, but then when it comes to references and character sheets and all that, I'm all over the place. All you gotta look at is my unorganized tabs for the proof. And in this video, I'm gonna be making 2 animations, so that's gonna be double the mess. So to help organize and streamline the process, I'll be using Milanote, the sponsor of today's video. Milanote is a program specifically used for organizing any ideas or plans you might have in your creative projects. It's kind of like using a bulletin board, but digital. Boards in Milanote are basically a blank canvas where you can add anything you need. The good thing about Milanote is that you can use it in any scenario, whether it's your art projects, school projects, or work projects. You need pictures? Easy. You want to add videos? No problem. You want to draw something on your boards? Light work. Specifically, I wanted to use Milanote to organize the references for my 2 animations. Usually I just have a million tabs open with pictures of the characters I want to draw, but with Milanote, everything was able to be stored in one place, which is a huge time saver. And speaking of time savers, their pre-made templates make it easy to start organizing any creative project you can think of. Gathering all my references was also super easy, as all I had to do was download their free web clipper tool and save all my photos and videos directly from the site without having to copy and paste. I use a lot of sites like Sakagaboro for a lot of animation references, so I was able to add a link to the site directly on the board for easy access, instead of having to type the web domain over and over again. I was even able to add a board inside another board for maximum organization potential. I know I've been talking a lot about desktop, but for all my mobile viewers, you don't gotta worry, because Milanote has a version for mobile with all the same features. Here's my favorite part because I'm low-key broke. Signing up for Milanote is completely free with 0 time limit to worry about, so there's really no reason not to try it. If all this sounds as interesting to you as it does to me, you can check the link in the description or the pinned comment to sign up today. Thanks to Milanote for sponsoring, and now let's get back to the video. Okay, so first we need to find the specific scene we want to adapt. I wanted to do a scene from the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai for 2 reasons. 1, it's one of my favorite arcs in the series. Piccolo's the GOAT, don't at me. And 2, I have both a Goku and a Piccolo figure, so I already have all the characters I need for the stop motion. By the way, I want to give a special shout out to my brother for getting me this Piccolo figure. It's pretty expensive and I never would have bought it on my own, so all thanks to him. After skimming through the arc, I decided to go with the opening of chapter 184, as it isn't too crazy in terms of any background elements or anything like that. And it's mainly about the fight between our 2 characters. So I got out my paper and I drew up a plan for how I wanted the animation to go. Now, based on what I've done so far, you're probably wondering why I'm just drawing a worse version of the manga. Just hear me out, alright? We're getting somewhere. Animation and comics are like 2 completely different methods of storytelling, and because of that, simply just making the panels move isn't going to be enough. If you don't know what I mean by that, I got you. For example, an animated scene is going to have one consistent aspect ratio, unlike a comic where the panel can be so many different sizes. So now we have to figure out what to fill the rest of the screen with when we're animating. Another thing is comics rely on our brains to fill in a lot of the action, since they're made up of, still images. Animations, on the other hand, will often try to fill in those gaps to prevent the scene from looking segmented. If you still don't get what I'm trying to say, that's alright. Here, let's check out how the actual anime adapted this back in the day. Now here's what it would look like if it only adapted the panels in the manga. See how choppy it all feels? So here's the plan. In my version, I'm going to fill in some of those blanks, and I want to add some of my own interpretations to the scene as well. For the storyboards, instead of just having all the paper sitting on my desk, I'm going to take pictures of all the thumbnails and transfer them into Milanote so I can organize them all better. To make it easier for myself, I use the storyboard template when creating a new board. So all I had to do was upload the pictures and start writing. If you don't want to use that one, that's fine, but there's a ton of other templates made for any creative project you might need. Okay, so we've got a storyboard now, but no animation yet. It's just kind of pictures right now, so how are we actually going to turn this into a video? Funnily enough, we're actually going to start both the 2D animation and the stop motion with the same step, an animatic. An animatic is basically just like a storyboard, but in video form. I know this kind of seems like we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, but trust me, this is important. In my 2D animation software, I'm going to draw the pictures from the storyboard and then time them for how long I want them to happen. An example, I want Goku to run for around 1 to 2 seconds, so I'll time the picture for that long, and maybe add some motion in there. This lets me plan out how fast or slow the animation is gonna be. And after all that, this is our animatic. Now that all the planning is finally done, we can start animating. And here's when we get the first big difference in 2D and stop motion animation. 2D requires drawing and the stop motion requires figures. Obviously. Let's start with the 2D first because we've already been drawing for most of the video at this point. Now, if you've seen animatics before, you'll notice mine have a lot more movement than they usually do. And that's because I also included all my keyframes in there, which are the main poses in the animation. Why did I do it? It's because I'm lazy. I'm gonna be real with y'all. I don't want to go back and add all the keyframes. But it's all good, because now we can add all our breakdowns and finally get the animation looking a bit more natural. But there's one problem. When I'm drawing, I've got to make this actually look like Dragon Ball. And if y'all couldn't tell, I'm not Toriyama. I've drawn some Dragon Ball art in the past, some in a more realistic style, some more closer to Toriyama style, but it still isn't perfect. So how are we actually going to draw more like Dragon Ball? References. The art in the 23rd World Tournament to the Saiyan Saga is personally my favorite look in the entire series. My second favorite look is the art style from the Broly movie. And because of that, I want to kind of fuse those two art styles and kind of make something that looks kind of like old and new Dragon Ball. So I'm going to collect pictures and scenes from both of those eras so I can use it as a visual aid and get used to drawing these characters. And after we have all that, the only thing we can do is practice drawing Goku and Piccolo. While I handle that, let's check in on the stop motion side. So luckily here, we don't have to draw a character since we got them in figure form. But I can't say the same for our environment. I want to make this table look more like the tournament grounds, and to do that we need to build a set. A set is just a physical version of the character's environment so the scene can look more complete. Now, I could spend a lot of time building an elaborate model, but I got school and I just don't have the time for all of that. So we're gonna go pretty simple with this. Basically, the main thing I want to make is the temple and the walls. The temple is pretty far in the background, so I just cut out some cardboard and painted it, so I can place it against my wall to hopefully make it look far away. Finally, there's some walls, and I can pretty much do the exact same thing I did for the temple. Now, while we wait for that to dry, let's see how the 2D animations go. Alright, so I think I've got a pretty good understanding of how to draw these characters now. I did make some changes though, like in the manga. Goku has his grippers out, but I'll put him back in his boots because they're easier to draw. And I've always liked how they look. Also, I hate drawing feet. I also simplified Piccolo's design just to make it a bit easier to draw. I made his do-rag a bit tighter so I wouldn't have to draw the folds and stuff. Also, I see you typing in the comments, oh, Piccolo's head wrap isn't supposed to be a do-rag, it's a turban. Just let me have this one, alright? Like, damn, bro. Now we can finally start animating. So I need to add all the necessary breakdowns for our keyframes. If you don't know what keyframes or breakdowns are, you can watch my How I Animate video. I go into it more there. Now, for the actual motion of the movements, there's a couple ways we can go about this. One of the most helpful things you can do as an animator is find video reference. You can use real-life videos or other animators' works to help you out. Another thing to consider is that I won't have as much time to make this animation. See, I've only got around 2 to 3 weeks, which sounds like a lot, but when it comes to animation, it really isn't. I usually like to add a lot of easing and extra frames for smooth motion in my animations, but I just don't have the time for that. Although this could be a good thing, as it's going to force me to be more creative and careful with how many frames I use, and it could help in imitating that limited animation that is in Dragon Ball. This is going to take a while, so while we do that, let's check if our painted set is dry. Alright, cool. So after setting these up, we can finally start animating our stop motion. Now there's 2 ways I can go about this. We can make this smooth or stylized. Let's check out the smooth approach first. A good example of stop motion that uses this approach is the YouTube channel The Animist. Doing stop motion this way focuses a lot on making it smooth or as lifelike as possible, usually using a lot of real life reference. Now I've tried doing this myself and I'm nowhere near as good as this guy is, so I don't know if I can do that. Plus it's been a long time since I've done stop motion, I'm kinda rusty, so maybe we'll do something a bit more stylized. The mindset of the stylized method focuses less on realism and more so on exaggeration. Now, animating this way can still have smooth movement, but the main goal is exaggerating the movement and visuals as much as possible. A good example of this is the stop motion short film Hadari? I don't know how to say it. The choreography in the fight scene isn't realistic, but it's still very extreme and visually entertaining. A fun part I like about this is how they utilize the puppets being made out of wood in the animation, like how the main samurai is using carpenter knives and a chainsaw, or how the blood is replaced with wood chips. Not to mention the exaggerated and fast movements add a lot to the pace and the vibe of the scene. I've done some animations in the past that have tried to go for that more stylized route, and I like those ones a lot better, so I'll try to do that. By the way, all the animators I mentioned here, you should watch their stuff for yourself and subscribe to them. It's really great stuff. Okay, so now that I know which method I'm going to use, I can start animating. Alright, so I've just finished the line art for our 2D animation, so now we need to move on to color. For the characters, I want to color pick specific frames from the anime, but that might be kind of hard. See, the Dragon Ball anime is around 40 years old at this point, and it hasn't been preserved the best, which is why sometimes you see clips where the footage is tinted more green or yellow than what was originally intended. A good solution for this would be to try and color pick from pictures of the actual painted cells, but unfortunately I couldn't find any from this arc. Instead, I went around trying to find stills and footage from the anime that looked as high quality as possible and didn't look stained. Once I found some pictures of Goku and Piccolo that I liked enough, I saved them and brought them into Milanote and used their color picking tools to start saving palettes of the characters' base colors and shadow colors. Once that was done, all I had to do was use those palettes to color my line art. Originally I was going to do the same for the backgrounds, but I just decided to paint it myself in the end. I had multiple different angles to paint for my animation, but luckily I made it a bit easier for myself by reusing elements I painted for other backgrounds, like the sky or this face on the walls. All I had to do next was add all the backgrounds and export the animation so I could do some editing and slight compositing work. Nothing too complicated. And here's where I realized I made a huge mistake. See, if you watch a lot of older TV shows, you'll notice that the aspect ratio is a lot more narrow than a lot of modern TV shows. Shows back then used a 4:3 aspect ratio as opposed to a 16:9 aspect ratio used in modern TV. That's because the actual TVs back then were a lot more narrow. I don't even know why I'm saying back then like it was that long ago. I mean, like up until I was like 11 years old, our TV looked like this. I want to imitate the look of the Dragon Ball anime, and that show has a 4:3 aspect ratio. However, I was animating in the more modern 16:9 aspect ratio. So I also made a version with a 16:9 aspect ratio and some more modern compositing, inspired by the Super Broly movie. That looks a lot better in my opinion. Fortunately, the stop motion didn't require too much editing, just some filters and color correction. So after all that work, we're all done. Let's check out both the final products.
How about this? What? Yeah, take this! Blaster! What? Yeah, take this!
So after doing both, which is actually better? 2D animation and stop motion definitely both have their pros and cons. 2D has a lot of passes like the sketching phase, cleanup phase, line art phase, coloring phase, and on and on and on, which can get tiring, and it isn't as simple as just taking a picture for each of your frames like in stop motion. However, I feel like with 2D you just get a lot more freedom. In 2D animation you can draw any background you want, any expressions you want. You can warp and exaggerate your characters as much as you want. In stop motion you're limited to what you have on you, whether it comes to your set or your figures. When I look at both of the animations I made, I definitely like the look of my 2D animation more. But I also feel like a lot of the movements could be better, as I really tried to be careful and economic with how many frames I used, as any extra frames meant more sketching and drawing and coloring and all that. With stop motion, I didn't have that worry, and I felt like I could animate more freely with the time constraints I had. Although, I will say the stop motion doesn't look as great as I think it could have. Again, as I said, it's been a long time since I've animated anything stop motion, so probably should have done some more practice before I did this project. Overall, I'd say I like my 2D animation more. But what I really want to know is what y'all think. Tell me in the comments which animation you think was better. I would also say if you do 2D or stop motion, or both even, try this challenge. It's definitely taught me a lot about the way I animate. If you want to try out Milanote, there'll be a link in the description to sign up for an account to organize your future projects. It's free, there's no time limit, and as you can see in this video, it helped out a lot. I'd appreciate if you could subscribe and follow the IG. I got a few stuff there that I'm proud of. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.